The ridge is on fire, not metaphorically. The scrub pine and dry kunai grass to private first class. Roy Matsumoto's left have caught from a Type 97 grenade, and the smoke is rolling thick and white across the slope of Hill 700, Myitkyina District, Burma, June 1944. And somewhere inside that smoke, 47 Imperial Japanese soldiers are waiting for him to make one more sound. He doesn't make a sound. He presses his cheek into the red clay of the hillside. The M1 Garand digs into his ribs. He has 3 rounds left. 3 rounds, no water, a gash above his left ear from shrapnel that has been bleeding into his eye for the last 20 minutes, and the position he was ordered to capture is still 40 meters uphill, behind 2 log-reinforced bunkers. He's surrounded by Imperial soldiers who have already killed 11 men from his battalion in the last 6 hours alone. His unit is gone. Not dead. Gone. The orders came through the field radio 17 minutes ago, crackling and half swallowed by static. Merrill's Marauders, second column, disengage, and fall back to the river. New orders. Contradictory orders. Orders that arrived at the exact moment Private First Class Roy Matsumoto had crawled past the point of no return. The men behind him pulled back. He couldn't. He was already inside the kill zone. Now look up at what he's facing. The Japanese garrison holding Hill 700 had repelled 3 previous American assaults. 3. The bunker complex at the summit was reinforced with logs cut from 6-inch teak, layered with 2 feet of packed earth, designed to absorb a direct 60-millimeter mortar hit and keep fighting. Inside those bunkers sat Type 96 light machine guns, the Taisho 96, capable of 450 rounds per minute, and riflemen who had been fighting in Burma for 2 years without a single evacuation. These were not green troops. These were veterans of the China campaigns, men who had survived Guadalcanal's sister campaigns in the Pacific Island chain, rotated to Burma as an elite garrison force. Their commander, Lieutenant Yoshio Takamura, had not lost a position in 4 years of war. In a moment, you'll understand what Roy Matsumoto did in the next 90 seconds that made no tactical sense, until you understand what he had already seen and heard on that hillside that no other American soldier alive could have understood. But first, you need to know who he was. Roy Matsumoto was born in 1913 in Los Angeles, California, to Japanese immigrant parents who had crossed the Pacific with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a belief so American it would have embarrassed lesser patriots. He grew up in Florin, a small agricultural community outside Sacramento, in a house where they spoke Japanese at the dinner table and English on the walk to school. His father grew strawberries. His mother sewed American flags for the local parade committee. Roy was the second of 4 children, and his 3rd grade teacher wrote in a report card that he was exceptionally bright, extremely disciplined, and possessed of a seriousness well beyond his years. He spoke Japanese fluently, perfectly, with the precise regional accent of the Tokyo area families who made up Florin's Japanese-American community. And he enlisted in February 1942, 10 weeks after Pearl Harbor and 6 weeks after Executive Order. 9,066 sent his parents and 2 of his siblings to the Gila River War Relocation Center in Arizona. He was 28 years old. He stood in line at the Sacramento recruitment office for 2.5 hours, in a line made up almost entirely of young Japanese-American men who had just watched their families be classified as enemy aliens, and he enlisted anyway. His fellow soldiers in the 5,307th Composite Unit, Provisional, the unit that would become known to history as Merrill's Marauders, called him Professor. Not because of his education, though he had more than most, because of the silence. Roy Matsumoto listened before he spoke. He thought before he moved. In a unit famous for its ferocity, he was known as the Quiet One. And what they did not fully understand, not yet, was why that silence was his most dangerous weapon. He kept a photograph in his breast pocket. His younger sister, Kyo, age 14, photographed through the chain-link fence of the Gila River internment camp. She was holding her hand up to the camera, not waving, pressing her palm against the wire as if she could push through it. He had looked at that photograph every morning in Burma. Every morning, without exception. He had made her a promise the day he left. "I'm coming back." That photograph, pressed against his heart in a waterproofed envelope, was what Roy Matsumoto had left on that hillside when everything else had been stripped away. The mission briefing for Hill 700 was held at 0400 on June 4th, 1944, in a bamboo lean-to that served as the Marauders' forward command post, 2 kilometers south of Myitkyina. The plan was precise. The unit's strength was substantial, at least on paper. H Force of the 5,307th would advance in 2 columns, totaling 62 men, supported by a mortar section with 6 rounds of 60mm ammunition per tube. First column would pin the Japanese garrison on the eastern slope. Second column, Roy's column, K Company, would flank from the northwest while the Japanese attention was drawn downhill. Intelligence reported 30 to 35 Japanese defenders, lightly equipped, potentially low on rations, after a week of Allied air interdiction on their supply lines. A bunker complex, yes, but penetrable with proper flanking pressure. What intelligence had failed to report, what reconnaissance photographs taken 3 days earlier had not captured, was what Lieutenant Takemura had done with those 3 days. He had received reinforcements. 47 additional soldiers, transferred from the 18th Division's reserve at Myitkyina proper, had moved into the Hill 700 complex in 2 nights' movement. They had added firing ports to both primary bunkers. They had pre-registered the approaches, meaning they had literally pre-aimed their machine guns at the exact angles and distances where attacking soldiers would be forced to walk. They had constructed a third hidden position, 20 meters below and north of the main complex, a concealed L-shaped trench cut directly into the root mass of a teak grove that did not appear on any American map. Total defenders, 82, not 35. The assault began at 0630. By 0712, everything had changed. The eastern column walked into pre-registered fire at 40 meters from the perimeter. 11 men went down in the first 90 seconds. The mortar section, set up in a clearing that had appeared safe on the aerial photographs, was bracketed by Japanese knee mortars within 4 minutes. The enemy had pre-targeted that clearing specifically. The mortars went silent. First column called for reinforcement. Instead, what came through the radio was something colder. Headquarters, seeing the flanking movement stall, and calculating a risk to the broader Mayatkina operation, transmitted new orders. Merrill's Marauders, all elements H-Force, disengage and consolidate at Riverline Alpha. Do not commit further to Hill 700. Acknowledge. It was Twist 1. The orders had changed. Fall back. Behind Roy, his sergeant relayed the order in a low hiss. The men around him, 6 of them left after the chaos of the first assault, began to pull back, crawling backward, down the slope. Roy had already moved past the invisible line. He was 15 meters from the hidden L-shaped trench that no American knew existed. He had no way to pull back without crossing open ground that the bunkers above had already pre-registered. He was cut off. No unit behind him. His radio was 4 meters away, in the hands of a sergeant now retreating down the hill. He had his M1 Garand, 3 full clips and 1 partial, 27 rounds total. 1 canteen that had been punctured by shrapnel and was now empty. A K ration that was still in his pack, and a field dressing already used on his left ear. So 27 rounds, 82 Japanese soldiers. 1 American soldier, alone in the smoke, 39 meters from a position his battalion had just been ordered to abandon. The objective was still there, and Roy Matsumoto had not been given the order to die. He moves uphill, not quickly, not recklessly, with the specific, unhurried deliberateness of a man who has already calculated that speed will kill him faster than caution. 39 meters. Inside the main bunker, Lieutenant Takamura is not concerned. He is a professional, and professionals do not concern themselves with individual soldiers crawling through smoke. His Type 96 gunner is tracking the eastern slope, where the suppressed American column is regrouping at the tree line. His 2 riflemen on the western firing port are watching the bamboo thicket to the north. Everything is where it should be. His defensive system is functioning exactly as designed. Sergeant Kenji Watanabe, a 13-year veteran of the Imperial Army who has fought in Manchuria, Shanghai, and the Arakan campaign, commands the concealed L-shaped trench 20 meters below. He has 8 men under his direct command. He is not worried either. His position is invisible. It has been invisible to 3 American assaults. It is, in his professional assessment, the single most important element of the hill's defense, because it exists to catch exactly the kind of flanking soldier that American doctrine produces. He is watching the slope to his north. Roy is moving from the south. Roy has 3 rounds in the chamber and 24 more in his jacket. He has been listening to Japanese voices for 11 minutes, and he has understood every word. He knows about the trench, not because of intelligence reports, not because of reconnaissance photographs, because Sergeant Watanabe's men, in the last 11 minutes, have talked to each other, in their own language, in the exact dialect Roy Matsumoto learned at his mother's table in Florin, California, the Tokyo region inflection, the specific military cadence of the Imperial Army, the precise clipped vocabulary of men giving each other positional updates in the expectation that no American within earshot speaks a single syllable of Japanese. Roy speaks all of it. He has heard them. He knows the trench exists. He knows its angle. He knows that 2 of its 8 men are watching north, 3 are watching east, and 3 are resting. He knows that the path between 2 specific teak trees, and the ones with the double root base he can see from his position, is the only approach the trench cannot cover. He is 12 meters from those trees when Sergeant Watanabe's trench opens fire from a position Roy had not accounted for. A fourth man, a position nobody had reported, 15 meters to Roy's left, in a shallow rifle scrape, invisible until the muzzle flash lit it up like a camera bulb. The ambush spring. Roy drops before the first round arrives, not because he saw the flash in time, but because something older and faster than thought threw him flat. The rounds cut the air where his chest had been. He rolls right. The rifleman in the scrape adjusts. Roy sees the barrel moving. He has 2 seconds. He throws dirt, a handful of red clay, hard and flung flat, that hits the scrape, opening at exactly the moment he rolls left and fires once. The rifleman flinches back from the dirt. 1 second. Roy fires once more, not at the man, but at the log brace behind the man, a ricochet shot that has no right to work and works anyway. The rifle in the scrape goes silent. He is still alive. He is now 11 meters from the teak trees with the double roots. What he did in the next 90 seconds made no tactical sense. Until you understand what he had already seen and heard that no other American soldier on that battlefield could have understood. He reaches the teak trees. He stops. He listens. Sergeant Watanabe's voice, sharp and sudden, cuts through the smoke. Naze shizuka nanoda. Hokoku seyo. Why is it quiet? Report in. No answer from the rifle scrape. Another voice, younger, uncertain. Hanbun no America jin ga irunoka? Are there many Americans? Half a company? Watanabe's answer is crisp, controlled, professional. A man who has been in positions of command long enough to know that fear is contagious. Ochitsuke. Hokoku wo mate, Iru. Stay calm, waiting for a report. But Roy hears something underneath the command. A frequency beneath the words. He has heard it before, not in Burma, but in the strawberry fields of Florin, when his father's workers got news they hadn't expected. A specific register of the voice. Not fear yet. The thing that comes before fear. The readjustment of a man whose certainty has been interrupted. Stage 2 has begun. Roy doesn't move toward the trench directly. This is the decision, the one that looks irrational if you don't know what he knows. He moves away from the trench. Uphill. He toward the main bunker. The trench is watching the approaches. The main bunker is watching the approaches. But between them is a seam, a 40-degree arc, that neither position can cover simultaneously without one of them repositioning. Roy knows this because he listened to the Japanese soldiers tell each other exactly where they were watching. He knows the seam exists. He is the only American alive on this hill who knows it. He moves through it like water through cracked stone. Microscene 1. He reaches the eastern edge of the main bunker's log wall. The firing port is 3 feet above his head. He can hear the Type 96 gunner breathing inside. He has a fragmentation grenade. He does not use it yet. He moves along the bunker's dead angle, the strip of ground the firing port cannot reach, until he reaches the corner. Microscene 2. He rounds the corner and finds something intelligence did not report and could not have prepared him for. There are people here, not soldiers. A Kachin woman, maybe 60 years old, with 2 children pressed against the back wall of the bunker's exterior. A girl who cannot be older than 8, a boy perhaps 11, both of them absolutely still, as if stillness were a form of armor. The woman's eyes find Roy's. She does not make a sound. She puts one hand over the girl's eyes. Roy stops. He looks at the children. The girl has a torn piece of longyi, the traditional Burmese wrap skirt, clutched in her hands, and she is pressing it against a wound on the boy's forearm that has been bleeding long enough to cake into a dark crust. They have been here for a while. They were here before the battle. They may have been here for days. His assault plan has just changed. The grenade at the firing port, the plan he'd been building in his head for 90 meters of crawling, would kill all three of them. He pockets the grenade. He is now operating without a plan, with 14 rounds left, and a woman and 2 children he cannot leave and cannot take with him into a firefight. He points to a shallow drainage cut 10 meters south, a depression that the bunker's walls would protect from direct fire. He mimes low, "Stay, do not move." The woman understands. She gathers the children without a word. Moving to the cut costs Roy 4 minutes, a position, and something he'll feel in his left knee for the rest of his life. A sharp, tearing sensation when he drops to cover the family's movement. A bad plant on uneven ground that he does not acknowledge because he cannot afford to. He doesn't think of the mission for those 4 minutes. He thinks of Kyo, of a photograph pressed against a chain-link fence, of the particular courage it takes to hold your hand up and keep it there even when nothing pushes back. Micro Scene 3. He reaches the bunker's supply entrance, a low crawl opening on the uphill side, covered with a hemp screen, exactly where he'd heard a Japanese soldier mention resupply runs 2 hours earlier when they still believed no American could hear them. He's now inside the perimeter. He has 14 rounds and a broken plan and a knee that is screaming at him. He waits, he listens. From inside the bunker, he hears Lieutenant Takemura's voice. The lieutenant is doing what commanders do when the situation degrades. He is radioing up. He is asking for confirmation of American positions. He is getting conflicting answers. His voice has the same quality Roy heard in Sergeant Watanabe's voice. That register below the words. They cannot count him. They don't know how many Americans are in the position. They are reporting multiple contact points because the one American left alive in their perimeter has been moving, and every position he's touched has stopped reporting in. To the Japanese garrison of Hill 700, it sounds like a company. There is something Roy needs them to believe for the next 3 minutes, and he is the only American who can make them believe it. This is the irrational decision. He opens his mouth. In perfect Japanese, I'm with the precise regional accent of a man born to the language, he calls out to the men in Sergeant Watanabe's trench, "Saiha go, homen tai ga kita, higashi wo mamot." Retreat, the flanking unit is here. Defend the east. He is Roy Matsumoto, from Florin, California, and he has just told the Japanese soldiers defending Hill 700 that they are being flanked by an entire American unit. In their own language, in the correct tactical vocabulary, in a voice that cannot possibly belong to an enemy. He presses his back against the teak log of the bunker, and he stops moving. His hands are shaking. He looks at them. He presses them flat against the earth. He is 36 years old. He is alone on a hill in Burma. His knee is torn. His head wound has started seeping again, and the blood has dried into a mask on the left side of his face. And somewhere at the base of his skull, there is a sound like his own blood, or the sound the jungle makes when the light goes wrong in the afternoon and he is not entirely sure which one it is anymore. He is thinking about 11 men. The men from his column who went down in the first 90 seconds of contact. He does not know who they were because he wasn't there for that part, but he knows their faces from the briefing, from the lean-to at 0400, from 4 months of marching through Burma in rain that doesn't stop for a week at a time. He is constructing arguments with them in his head. He is telling them he's still up here. The radio order said, "Disengage, fall back." His sergeant had looked at him before pulling back. Not with judgment. With the specific look a man gives another man when both of them know the geometry is wrong and neither of them has a solution. Roy had nodded. His sergeant had gone. He considers it now, the falling back. He constructs the version of events where he follows the order, slides back down the slope, makes it to the river, reports in. The marauders regroup. They plan a second assault, with better intelligence, with proper mortar support, with the full picture of what they're facing. He knows that story ends with the Japanese garrison still in place. He knows it ends with more men climbing this hill. He knows every hour that position exists is another hour that the supply route to Myitkyina, the last Japanese-held city in northern Burma, the key to the entire Burma Road resupply chain for China, stays open. He knows all of this, and none of it is why he doesn't go back. He reaches into the waterproofed envelope in his breast pocket. He doesn't look at the photograph. His eye is too full of blood to see it clearly. He just holds it. Kyo's palm against the wire. He was born in this country. His parents were born in Japan. He has been given the precise, extraordinary gift of being the one person on this hill who can hear the enemy's plans, speak the enemy's language, and use both facts like a weapon. And he was born with that gift, not in spite of what happened to his family, but in the same country that happened in. That's the thing that never appears in any official record. He doesn't think of it in those words. He probably doesn't think in words at all in that moment. He just feels the photograph in his hand, and he tucks it back into the envelope, and he checks his remaining rounds. 14. Then the partial clip. 21 rounds total. He gets up. The confusion his false radio call has created is already doing its work. Sergeant Watanabe's men have moved. Roy can hear the positional shift through the teak roots, the sound of 8 men adjusting from their fixed positions toward the eastern slope, because the voice they heard told them in perfect Japanese that the flanking unit was coming from the east. Their L-shaped trench is now facing the wrong direction. Lieutenant Takamura's voice from inside the bunker is sharp, clipped, trying to reassert control over a situation that has stopped making sense. He is asking for the position of the American unit that just called in Japanese. He is being told there is no American unit. He is being told that the only contact is a single soldier, maybe, who was spotted 40 minutes ago in the smoke below the perimeter and who has now disappeared. A single soldier. Takamura goes quiet. Roy can hear the silence. It has a different texture than other silences. Then Takamura says something Roy will remember for the rest of his life. In a voice so quiet, it sounds almost like a man speaking to himself. Hitori de kono, ichi wo semenai. A single man does not assault this position. Roy stands up. He fires twice through the supply entrance. Not aimed shots, suppressive fire, driving the interior occupants away from the western wall. He moves to the firing port on the north face. The Type 96 is positioned there. Through the gap in the hemp screen, he can see the gunner, back turned, reconfiguring his angle toward the eastern slope, where Watanabe's men have now reported contact with. Nothing. Shadows. Confusion. Roy fires once through the port. The gunner drops. One round. Roy pivots. He moved. Fired. Dropped. Moved again. The bunker's second soldier comes to the port. Roy is already gone, back along the dead angle. He fires once at the man's silhouette as it appears at the corner. The man goes down. 20 meters. 15. 10. The voices inside the bunker are breaking apart now. They are no longer orders. They are questions directed at other questions. Where is he? How many? Which side? A Watanabe soldier comes over the trench rim, looking for the American flanking unit that was reported on the east slope, and finds Roy between him and the bunker entrance. Roy fires twice. The soldier drops. Now the L-shaped trench is facing east. It is designed to catch attackers from the northwest. Roy is behind it. He throws one grenade, the one he didn't throw at the firing port, because of the children, because of Keogh, because of the cost of becoming a man who throws grenades at children, into the trench from the rear. The trench goes silent. He reaches the bunker entrance. He has 4 rounds left. Lieutenant Takamura is inside. Roy does not fire immediately. He calls out, in Japanese, in the command register, in the voice of a man who has already won. Teiko wo yamero. Seiki ni nare. Cease resistance. Attention. He does not know if it will work. He is not a man who deceives himself about outcomes. But he is also Roy Matsumoto from Florin, California, and he spent his entire life learning to listen before he spoke. In 3 seconds of silence. Then Takamura's pistol hits the dirt floor of the bunker. Roy hears it distinctly. And Lieutenant Yoshio Takamura, a man who had defended this position against 3 assaults and had never surrendered a line in 4 years of war, says the words that Roy will hear for the rest of his life when the jungle sounds like blood. Watashi wa kofuku suru. I surrender. The firing port goes dark. The hill goes quiet. 1 sentence of silence after the last shot. Then below in the bamboo, Roy hears something. The woman. A small sound, not quite crying, not quite relief. Something that has no name in Japanese or English, but is felt the same way in both. The position is taken. The mission is complete. The 3 civilians are alive. The first Americans back up the slope were from E Company, who had heard the sudden silence and broken from the river line without orders. They found the following: 2 fortified log bunkers, 1 intact and 1 partially collapsed from grenade detonation. 1 concealed L-shaped trench, 8 meters in length, now silenced. 1 rifle scrape position south of the main complex. 17 dead defenders. 6 wounded defenders in surrender. 1 Imperial Japanese lieutenant sitting cross-legged in the entry of the main bunker with his hands open on his knees. 1 American soldier with a head wound, a torn left knee, and 21 rounds fired, sitting 8 feet away with his back against the teak log wall. And 3 Kachin civilians, a woman and 2 children, in a drainage cut 10 meters south, unhurt, alive. The sergeant who arrived first said nothing for a full 10 seconds. Then he said, "Roy, what in the entire hell?" The intelligence failure was documented later. Enemy strength had been underestimated by a factor of nearly 3. The concealed trench had not appeared on any map or reconnaissance photograph. The route of approach had been compromised by the reinforcements' arrival. Everything the mission briefing said had been wrong, and the position had been taken anyway, by one man alone, in just over 90 minutes of continuous action. The enemy testimony began immediately. The first prisoner interrogated, a private from Sergeant Watanabe's trench section, one of the few survivors, was asked by the American intelligence officer how many American soldiers had attacked the position from the north. He looked at the officer for a long moment. Then he said, in Japanese, and translated at the table by Roy Matsumoto himself, "We believed it was a full company. We heard them on the eastern approach. We heard radio communications in Japanese, our own language, directing units to our flanks. I did not understand how this was possible." The intelligence officer asked, "How many men did you actually face on the north side of the position?" The prisoner said nothing. The officer repeated the question. The prisoner said, "One. We are told it was one. I do not believe this is accurate." Lieutenant Takemura's interrogation came 3 days later, conducted through a formal prisoner processing procedure at the forward headquarters. The transcript, declassified in the 1990s, records the following exchange. The intelligence officer asks Takemura to describe the assault. Takemura's answer is translated and recorded. The assault made no sense by any framework I possessed. We had prepared for every scenario our training described. We had not prepared for a man who could hear our orders before we gave them. We had not prepared for a man who did not die when we told each other that he had died. When the position was breached, I thought, this man is not fighting with weapons. He is fighting with knowledge, our knowledge. He had been listening to us speak and had understood everything. When asked about the soldier himself, Takemura paused. The transcript notes a pause of approximately 15 seconds and said, "We called him Koe no Yurei, the ghost who speaks. Not because he was invisible. All soldiers try to be invisible. Because he used our voices against us. He made our own words into weapons. I have never encountered this before. I do not believe I will again." The nickname was not generic. It was born from a specific moment, from the false radio call in perfect Japanese that had pivoted 8 trained soldiers away from his approach and toward a phantom flanking unit that existed only in Roy Matsumoto's voice. A captured diary from one of Watanabe's men, translated post-war, contains this entry. The attack was made by one man who we could not find, could not hold, and could not predict. He knew things he could not have known. He moved places we did not expect. I do not know how to describe him, except to say that it was not like fighting an enemy. It was like fighting an idea of an enemy that was smarter than us. The Kachin woman, her name was Da Nan, though this was not recorded officially until post-war survivor testimonies were compiled, told the intelligence officer through a Kachin interpreter that the American soldier had stopped his assault to protect the children at cost to himself, when it would have been faster and safer to continue. She said, in the Kachin tongue, that this was unexpected. "War makes men forget children," she said. This man did not forget. The Distinguished Service Cross was awarded to Private First Class Roy Matsumoto, 5,307th Composite Unit, Provisional, for extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy in Burma on June 4, 1944. The citation reads, in part, Private First Class Matsumoto's extraordinary valor, tactical ingenuity, and determined single-handed assault against a heavily fortified enemy position contributed materially to the success of the Myitkyina campaign. Acting without support, under enemy fire, and against a numerically superior force in prepared defensive positions, Private First Class Matsumoto employed his unique linguistic capabilities to deceive and disorient the enemy garrison, subsequently neutralizing the defensive position through sustained individual assault. His actions reflect great credit upon himself and the military service. Official military language is compressed, stripped, designed not to feel anything, and yet read it again. Unique linguistic capabilities to deceive and disorient. They are describing a man who turned his identity, the identity that had caused his family to be imprisoned without charge in the country he was fighting for, into the most precise weapon on the battlefield. Roy Matsumoto returned to the United States after the war. He was married. He became a school teacher in Sacramento. He spent the next 50 years teaching American children in the same county where his family had been interned. And he did not speak publicly about Burma for a very long time. When he did speak at a veterans reunion in the 1990s, he was asked by a younger veteran, "When did you decide not to follow the retreat order?" He thought about it. Then he said, "I don't think I decided. I think the decision had already been made before I got there. I just caught up to it." He was inducted into the Ranger Hall of Fame in 1995 by one of the first Nisei soldiers, American-born sons of Japanese immigrants, to receive that honor. His sister Kyo, released from the Gila River internment camp in 1945, lived to be 93 years old. She attended the Hall of Fame induction. She stood next to her brother in the photograph. She is not pressing her hand against any wire. He was given wrong intelligence. Everything they told him about the enemy position was wrong before his boots hit the slope. His orders changed when he needed them most. The Army said, "Come back." He was past the point of coming back. He faced an ambush placed precisely where he would have to go, a trap designed by professional soldiers who had repelled every assault before him. He survived it in 3 seconds with a handful of dirt and 1 round. He protected civilians when it made everything harder, slower, more dangerous. He had 1 grenade left when he reached the bunker. He kept it because of 2 children and a woman in a drainage cut and a decision that had nothing to do with tactics, and an enemy that had prepared for every possible attack, that had 4 years of victories behind them, that had every advantage a fortified garrison can have, gave him a name when it was over. Not because he had to, not because protocol required it. Lieutenant Takamura gave Roy Matsumoto a name because when he sat in that interrogation room and tried to explain what had happened on Hill 700, the only word available to him for what he had faced was a Japanese word, Koe no Yurei, the ghost who speaks. If you are a veteran reading this, you know what it costs to be the last one still moving when everyone else has stopped. You know the weight of a decision made in the dark, alone, that nobody will ever fully understand because nobody else was there. You know what Roy Matsumoto knew, that the mission doesn't end because the situation becomes impossible. Sometimes it ends because one man decides that impossible is a description, not a verdict. If you have never carried a rifle in anger, know this. The man who won that hill was not a superhero. He was a school teacher from Sacramento who grew up picking strawberries. He was a man whose government put his family behind wire and who went to war for that government anyway. Not out of naivety, not out of broken loyalty, but out of something that has no name in Japanese or English and is felt the same way in both. His hands shook on that hill. He pressed them flat against the earth to make them still. He thought of a photograph, a palm against chain link, a promise made to a 14-year-old girl at an internment camp gate. He kept it. I'm coming back. He came back. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss these forgotten stories of extraordinary American courage. Who should we tell next? Drop their name in the comments.